First, Dr. Nelson will share your experience first with us. And the idea of this meeting actually to have a discussion. So to discuss about these 4 items mainly. So they will give a quite short talk in the beginning, and then it's up to us how can we get more information from them in this discussion. Right? Dr. Nelson, please.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to It was nearly 55 years ago that I met the first people from PPE in Indonesia. I should say that I was a bit surprised that you invited me because I'm already 10 years retired. So I thought, what could an old horse tell you about this topic? And on the other hand, I should say that I'm working already so long at this university. I studied here at the university that sometimes it seems as if I was born at the campus. And in a certain way, I'm glad that I can return for a few moments. Now, as for these questions, you will understand that I can't deal with them all. In fact, I will deal with the first one, the fourth one. And as far as I know, the first contacts of the Radboud University, at that time the Catholic University Nijmegen, with Indonesian universities, besides the personal relations, especially by way of the missionaries and Catholic teachers, the first formal contacts were first at the Faculty of Medicine. I don't know precisely what year, but I can tell you that next Thursday, they will celebrate 50 years of cooperation, not only with Indonesia, but also with Tanzania, and if I'm not mistaken, with Nicaragua. And there will be a book presentation about this 50 years cooperation between the medical faculty and several institutions in the 3 countries mentioned. There will be a movie called Academic Passion in Tropics. It says something about their motivation. But thinking about it, the first contact of the social faculty, which I'm more familiar with the Indonesian university, was, I should say, a bit embarrassing. Because it was around, I think, 68 that some students from the psychology department who did field work at Java returned to the university and suggested that there should be cooperation between the university and Universitas Indonesia. And within this framework, and sponsored by NUFIC, I think some of you know it, the Netherlands University Foundation for International Cooperation. During some years, 5 psychology lecturers, one professor, Professor Jaspers, went to Indonesia and were training psychology students from Universitas Indonesia. On the other hand, also some Indonesian students came to Nijmegen and received their PhD. And one of them was Mrs. Sadli, the wife of the, at that time, Minister of Economics in Indonesia. Now it was about 10 years later that something embarrassing happened, because Admiral Sudomo, during a press conference, told that he had some screening of political prisoners by way of psychological tests, and that those tests were set up with the help of the psychology departments in the Netherlands. Now, it was not difficult to find out which department. Besides, it was of the Free University and it was of the Catholic University. And yeah, in the meantime, not in the beginning, after, let me say, 65, 66, there was not so much known in the Netherlands about what really happened at that time in Indonesia. And from the positive side, you could say that as a former colonial power, the Dutch government and Dutch people were a bit careful in commenting on what happened. But at the end of the 70s, it was Indonesia that lost a lot of their credit because of the military regime, because of the invasion of East Timor, and it was known that that in fact a lot of the mass murders before in the 60s were not that spontaneous, were set up by the military. And so it was a bit embarrassing to learn that the screening had taken place with the help of forms that were devised with the help of psychology staff here at this university. And it created a kind of row, because you can imagine that people were not that positive about it. You've heard a bit about this kind of screening. I know it because I have an Indonesian friend who admitted that he went to Buru for this screening. He said, well, at that time we didn't know. We only know, look, PKI was bad. So, and we could make a trip to Buru. So we went there. That was screening. That was what he told me, and that was what he confirmed some years ago. And you will find a bit of the screening also in the book of Muja and Mantatur, his prisoner ship, where he is referring to it. So I could say that the social faculty, it was kind of unlucky start of the relations, academic relations with Indonesia. And it learned me that if you have those kind of partnerships, or if you do research, also, of course, in other countries, you have to look at the political context. And in later years, during about 30 years, I did research in the Philippines on housing. And I started to do this research on housing in the Philippines, just a short intermezzo to make my point clear. And as a physical planner, I wanted to study the housing problem more or less in a technical way. But at the time of my arrival, that was President Marcos in his last years. And in fact, I soon discovered that I was touching on a very sensitive issue, because the opposition was underground and above, were organizing people in squatter areas in a social movement. So I turned my project from housing to the urban social movement, and then I was really entering a kind of minefield of all kind of, because there were, I mean, from several sides there were some, let's say, some people who wanted to take advantage of research, and it was really difficult to stay independent. So what I learned that if you have those partnerships, in the first place you have to look at the context where it takes place, and you have to be careful. And this applies also for countries who, at first instance, look, let me say, fairly democratic like Malaysia. But okay, that was the first question. Now the fourth question about future research. I was in the 90s, I was asked to be backstopper for a project called 500 meter plus research around Lake Toba. And it was set up by the HKBP No Manson University. The attractive point was that 5 of our former students could be employed for, 3 of our former students could be employed for 5 years at HKBP No Manson. And they could do the research. And at the same time, students could do field work in the same area. On the other hand, the backstopping and the guiding of research was done by this university, and it was done without payment. Received a lot of money. Now the interesting thing is that it was not only a partnership between 2 universities, but there was also a third party involved. That was services overseas. They were funding a private Christian organization, and they were funding this whole project. The finance of the 3 lecturers. Now, thinking about it, there was one PhD from the Dutch Fellows. There were several students, researchers, and I'm proud to say that some of them are still in Indonesia, are still working. One of them, Java, and the other one is in social work, engaged, still in the Batak area. But if you look at the impact for Indonesia and the universities and academic life, I would say it was near zero. So this gave me something to think. And I think that the mistake we made is that if you have a partnership, it should even be embedded in a larger network, so that the results of your research could be shared with other people in a wider environment. In this case, the publications, I fear that they are somewhere in the library, should be done. But it's a pity, because 5 years work and was not really a kind of follow-up. And I think that in the current situation it's better, because usually there is exchange of the resource of research. And I would say that in future partnership programs, it should be explicitly part of the project, that there would be enough possibility for exchange with other universities and other civil society organizations, which in fact happened with the project Healthy Cities in Developing Countries. I think my time is over, but Atmajaya was involved in the network. There was an exchange with universities in Brazil, in India, and again Tanzania. Pakistan. So in that case, the impact was larger. Finally, I should say that my last experience with partnerships in Indonesian universities was with Sugiyakanat Semarang. And there I learned that, and maybe that's also your experience, that before you start a PhD program from both sides, you have to make clear what expectations are.
Mm.
What do you expect?
Mm.
And these differ not only by discipline. The discipline of medicine, they have other criteria for evaluating species than, let us say, geography or sociology. But it differs also by discipline, but it differs also by country. If you go to Germany, it's another question, PhD. And if you go to France, by the way, as far as I know, that's a disaster. Because this is really a lot of work if you want to see in France. But now I have to stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So much.
Good. Well, thank you very much for this invitation and the challenging questions, because I can assure you that, and that was also mentioned in the invitation, that more and more Indonesian students come, and the Indonesian government has a reason to send students to Europe, to the Netherlands. But for the executive board, it is not always easy how to deal with a large group of Indonesians and how to supervise and so on. So there are quite some challenges. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity to have the chance to say something about it. And a lot has been said already by my colleague Tom. One correction. You see, in a university, you always, who is the oldest and who is the best? Now, I can assure you that it was not the Faculty of Medicine that started, but it was my faculty, the Faculty of Theology. There was a very simple reason. You mentioned that already.
It's Catholic.
It's a Catholic university. And of course, there was this huge network of missionaries. But there was a Dutch bishop in Java, Bishop Muskens, who was a PhD here. And it was for him already in the 50s. There was quite some revelation, but it was not well organized. But these, so maybe the Faculty of Medicine says that I can assure you that that is not the case. Anyway, well, many interesting questions. I address them differently, I mean, in a different way than my colleague does. But let me start my experience. It is not that long as Tom, not 45 years, but this year, exactly 25 years ago. It was in 1993 that I was first invited to Indonesian university. And I very well remember that at that time we thought about cooperation in terms of development aid. Catholic university, missionary work, so we wanted to help the Indonesian university. So we thought that as, we are going to help those poor people. When we think in it now, and I think we have to be very realistic, we don't think in terms of development aid, we simply see it as a win-win situation. It is basically it is a give and take. And interestingly, when I went to Indonesia, everything was paid by Netherlands. Now, most of the activities are paid by Indonesians. I mean, the fact is that, of course, Indonesia has a lot of money. Indonesia invests much more money in science and education than we do. So what is a win-win situation here? It's very simple. We have quality. I mean, Radboud University is a top 125 university. The Indonesian government wants to increase the quality of its universities. So the Indonesian government demands quality. We have quality. We don't have a lot of money, but the Indonesian government has money. So here you see, basically it is a win-win situation. And so I think most of you, well, not all of you, and they have either LPDP scholarship or DICTI or whatever, MORA scholarship. That is the fact. And by the way, you bring a lot of money to Radboud University. So that is the situation. And that is also the first lesson, I would say. Don't think in terms of we are going to help. No, it is simply you have an interest, or the Indonesian government has an interest, Radboud University has an interest. So basically it is a situation where two partners offer something and benefit from each other. Now, as I said already, the Indonesian government, and that was mentioned already, has a very ambitious plan and to be the leading in the top 10 countries in the world in 2040. For that reason, they want to have high quality doctoral students. So for that reason, they send students to Europe. And they think that Radboud University is among the universities that can offer that quality. And for us, as Radboud University, as I said already, we don't have that many scholarships. So we look for degrees, because we are financed through degrees. So every degree is money for the Radboud University. We also think in terms of knowledge validation, and that is something that our government wants, that we are not only doing our research in a large building at the 20th university, at the 20th floor, but they also want to know, but what do you do with the knowledge? Who profits from your knowledge? So when we can show, well, we have collaboration with Indonesia, we work on concrete issues, and so that helps also in our knowledge validation. And of course, there is also the aspect of internationalization. Radboud University has a policy on that. As you know, we are an aging society. That means our number of students is going down. That's a sociological issue. So we also look at how can we expand our the people that we work for. And if they are not in the Netherlands, then we also look for students or PhD candidates overseas. So I think when and why do partnerships initiate? Well, I think it is a win-win situation. And I think we have to be clear about it. You have an interest, not you personally, but the Indonesian government has an interest, we have an interest, and somehow there is a mix. And that has also something to do with the expectations. I think we have to be very clear about what is the expectation of both parties. Secondly, how the structural and scientific factors are addressed. I'm not sure if I get the question, but I interpret indeed it has to do with quality assessment, and as my colleague already said, the criteria and the views about what is good quality, of course, differ in countries, differ in disciplines, and here again, I fully agree with Tom when he says that the mutual expectations have to be very clear. And so in my faculty, we had a debate about that for a long time. And should we have other standards for external PhD students? So should we say, well, for a Dutch PhD, we have these criteria, but for Indonesian, they can be a bit less? Or no, we say, no, you come to Netherlands, your ministry wants to upgrade Indonesian universities according to European standards. Well, these are our standards. And I think you have to be very clear about it. And so we are not going to change our policy. No, it is your decision to come to Europe. So you know, these are our standards. And if you can meet them, I mean, this is not the right place for you. And I think that is also part of the clarity that you give. Third, what is the good and bad practices? Of course, we have many good practices, we have many bad practices. I give some of my experiences. The first said already, don't see it as aid, or we are going to help people. No, we have an interest, you have an interest, and somehow we meet. And I think that is the best. Secondly, what I often see, and I almost every week, there is an Indonesian university that says, oh, we want to have a memorandum of understanding. I understand. Because every university has this ambition, we want to be higher in their world ranking. That is simply not going to work. And it is very frustrating. I think in the beginning, I was very optimistic. And so I put signatures under memoranda. And then when the signatures, nothing happens. And then it is nice in the file there. We have a memorandum with Radboud University. Nothing happens. Don't do that. Don't do that.
But that signature is very valuable for them.
For there. But for us, I mean, I will come back to it. No, I understand, but we are not going to help in that sense. I mean, I understand that the signature is important for the Indonesian university, but when it is the signature and nothing happens, it is frustrating for all the parties. Let it not be a top-down approach. I always say, and I have many requests. Say, no, just start with something. Make a PhD program, make whatever program. And when this works, then it is a time to say, okay, can we formalize it? But don't make it a top-down approach. And the rector comes and we have a memorandum, we have a ceremony, and then, no. I think let colleagues work together, let them supervise, and when it works, when there is a mutual benefit there, then at a certain stage you can say, okay, well, let us make a memorandum of understanding. Otherwise, it is not going to work. I don't think in terms of a short run, but a long-term planning. I mean, most of my contacts in Indonesia, they last for 20 years. And I know the people personally. I know what they do. I mean, there is a commitment there. You have become friends. But if it is only something for 2 years, that's not going to work. Before you know each other, before you clarify those mutual expectations, the memorandum is over. It's not going to work. So if you make a commitment, do it for a long time, and see it also as a mutual something. Also something that I experienced, and that happens to all of us. We go to Indonesia, we are invited to give a guest lecture, and then afterwards you are presented, oh, please, can you put a signature? That is a one-man show. So the one faculty, when I'm gone, everything dead. No, it only works if you have a team of scholars. You say, okay, 3, 4, 5, and best if there are more faculties involved. Let's say it is not Mr. Van Aersen or it is not Frans Wijzen, but it is a team of scholars who really have this commitment. But if it is only one person who has a collaboration with Semara or with Mention It, I mean, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. We talked about it just, what is sometimes very frustrating, you know, Dutch people, they are straightforward, they like an agenda, and they like planning. How often I was in my office waiting for somebody, whether it is the embassy or the rector of a university, and then cancels, postpones. That is very frustrating. I mean, of course, this is something that has to do with intercultural communication. We have to be more patient. But if you make an appointment with a university and you have to cancel it for 3 times, they say, well, how serious is a pattern like that? And so that is not going to work. And of course, I do realize that we have to be more patient. We are very straightforward in our planning, but if you have to postpone, that is very frustrating. I once really happened to tell you this example, and don't tell it further.
I'll stay here.
2 years ago, we had indeed the Mora came with a delegation, 7 people. Everything was planned. The rector was there. The chairperson of the foundation was there. The whole administration building was there. So postponed. Lunch was. You don't do that a second time, or maybe a second time. That is something that we really have to think about. That if you're serious, I mean, there must be a commitment from both sides. What happens very often is that you and we discussed it before. Okay, there is money given by whatever ministry, and then for budgetary reasons in November, everything is cut. That is also very frustrating. And you know that's the Indonesian policy. That's not going to work. Good practices, there are many good practices. You are wonderful students, very committed students. Challenging research projects, whether that is on water or gender or whatever. And for me, speak for myself, I also get a new energy when I go to Indonesia and see, well, we are not working on the 20th floor of the Erasmus building, but we are really working with people, doing things that you think, well, here we can really make a difference. That is also for us very inspiring. I speak for myself. And then I come to the future theme. Well, we don't have to think long term, because the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research and the Ministry of Technology, Science and Higher Education has a long-term planning based on our national research agendas. And the basic topic is societal challenges. I think the topic for this year is resilient society, and there was a goal this year. There will be a goal next year, and so there is a lot of money. There is a lot of money, but my experience is when you see a goal like that, I think that the present goal is on water and something. When you have an existing team of people who know each other and who work, then it's very easy to sit together and say, okay, we are drafting a project and we submit it to the scientific. So that is the value of having teams working together for long term, who know each other. You don't need many talks. I know some of my Indonesian colleagues very well. I know that within 30 minutes they can draft something. I can comment on that. But if a call comes and then you have to sit down, then you have to create your network, then you have to ask, who is my colleague? You are too late. You are simply too late. So themes is not a problem. We have a national research agenda. You have a national research agenda. Both governments agreed that there will be collaboration. There is money. The only thing is, and then I go back to those issues. Don't start a network when there is this call. No, employ existing networks, scholars who know each other, who trust each other, who know their experiences, and then it is rather easy to make an application. So let me end here by these experiences that I want to share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we open the discussion now. Please, anyone who have comments, remarks, questions. It's a discussion. It's not a lecture. Yeah, it's a discussion. Do you also find this as a part of the barrier between Indonesia and Dutch? Because Indonesian students.
What happens also with Dutch too?
Yeah, but that's not happened with my kids. And also the kids in my children's school. Since the beginning, they are forced or they are trained to ask questions, to express their opinions. But my experience when I went to school in Indonesia, that's not actually part of our education system. But maybe I went to the different school as my fellows in here. I don't know. So please. Yeah.
Thank you both for storing your times. Really nice talk. Really appreciate. I'm from the Faculty of Medicine. So as far as I know, it's really limited from the Faculty of Medicine. So I'm working in Pajajaran University, which has a long experience of collaboration between Radboud Pajajaran University.
That's Bandung, eh?
Bandung, that's correct. And since the beginning, I think that's true that the U2U memorabilia, that you call, the signature is really important because it's kind of like a legal thing. Really need black on the white paper about that. But then as far as I know, in the Faculty of Medicine, we have a program and it's still continuously working until now from the bachelor education, and some projects are it's still on working with the let's say postgraduate level. So I'm quite optimistic with this because both are contributed equally. That we send the bachelor student here for certain periods, and also some natural and from the Radboud medical student going to Indonesia for a certain subject. And as far as I know, we also regularly evaluated. And since it's worked wonderfully both sides, so we keep continue that. But then, of course, for the postgraduate, it's really based on the project, let's say. And so far, the project also available from both sides. So from Indonesian side and also from here, from Netherlands. And we, because then you know each other for a long time and trust each other, then it's of course more easily that you can create a new project or whatever based on the previous good experience and also the output. Because then the output, like the papers, really for us, it really boosts us as a university to have a top quality journal published with both projects. But probably for the Radboud, it's not really demanding. But still, for the personal, of course, it will be nice. But I don't know, out of the medical faculty, and for me myself, I'm not a part of that project. So my presence here, I have my personal goal that I can collaborate in the future for my field, because my field is different. But that's probably, it seems impossible, but at least now I'm here and I'm working.
But the example that you give is one of the good practices. And with Bandung, we have a very intensive collaboration. ITB, UNPAD, not only one faculty. My faculty is involved, the science faculty is involved, the social sciences is involved, because we were committed to the water, health and development. So this alliance, now this is a very good example. A Dutch university, Indonesian universities, businesses are involved. And as you said, indeed, due to some people who were very committed in the Faculty of Medicine, André van der Ven, who was there. But it was not only him. There was a team, and I'm part of that team. Twan Smits, a science faculty, Edwin de Jong. So you have a team, and then it works. Then it works. This is a very good practice. But if you don't have a collaboration like that, it's very difficult to maintain that. And the good thing in that program is indeed that it is not only at the postgraduate level, but indeed it starts at the bachelor and then the master level, and then hopefully some people continue to the PhD program.
But I know that the collaboration is still ongoing now. But I just wonder, how do you spread that collaboration out of the team or person that you already know nicely? How to invite a new party, new people?
We did already. Yeah, we did already. We are now this whole idea of water, health and development is now in Surabaya, Samarang, Yogyakarta. Even think in Kalimantan. So that, but you can do that because you have a good example. You can show something. Okay, this works. This is high quality, and then people in other universities they say, "Oh, what's going on there? Can we do the same thing?"
But the scope of the collaboration itself, is it going broader here in the Netherlands or only in Indonesia side that it's growing?
It is growing in the sense that the universities of applied sciences. So this specific project now is spread not among the Netherlands universities, but among the what we call the hogescholen. So the University of Applied Sciences. There are 3 hogescholen who are joining this collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
That is also for us profitable as a Radboud University, because many students who follow who have a degree of the University of Applied Sciences want to continue with a master degree at the university. And so for us, also the collaboration with the Universities of Applied Sciences, and that's the Hogescholen, that is also important, because from there we get our master's students and possibly PhD students.
Just wonder why then you not
broaden this ladder?
Oh yeah.
But Tom, you wanted to say?
No, just as a small remark. Yes, I know the program also of Rotterdam.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, I think this collaboration with, let me say, entrepreneurial interest of the Netherlands, I'm not completely happy.
Oh,
Okay.
because
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's Delft and.
There is a debate about it, but the reality is, of course, if you can't show to the Netherlands Organization of Scientific Research that societal partners are involved, it's very difficult, because you always have to get some additional funding from non-university partners. Otherwise, you. But it is a debate. I realize
there are some ethical questions.
There are ethical questions. That's good.
you have questions?
Okay, thank you very much for Frans and also Tom. This very nice speech, and because you mentioned before that we had a how to say we have many scholarships part in Indonesia, like Mora, Nufik, and LPDP. And as the chair, not the chair, but the person who is responsible for LPDP awardee here, I know the LPDP now limits the list of universities, especially in Europe. And for Radboud University, they only give psychology faculty.
That's not completely true.
Yeah, this is what I know. Even though we can still apply if we had specific terms and conditions.
Exactly.
But if you are aware with this situation, and we hope that you can do something to persuade them, because we are, as the student here, we can recommend the program to our next generation. And but it is very good that you are aware with this condition. So
I know that the administration, the international office is working on that. But we were assured by LPDP that indeed they have one discipline for a university, but it is broader than that. So it does not mean you can only, in this case, it is psychology.
Only
psychology. But that is the level that they want to collaborate. But it is broader than that. So
at least one in our department,
still
exactly.
Because like my colleague from microbiology, her professor is worrying about the discontinuous plan of the.
But our international office is actually working on that.
Exactly.
At the moment, even there's someone who would like to do a PhD in our department of geography, it's already go to the next level. So it means it's
so
okay.
that list does not mean that only psychology students can apply.
There's a way. Of course, it's still in the system. It's only psychology, but there's a way actually how to.
Take another way.
Take another way.
Okay, that's good.
That's a job.
Sorry.
Chairman.
Can I follow up on your presentation? You can answer, both of you are welcome to answer. I've heard many collaborations with Java context, like University of Indonesia, University of Pajajaran, Surabaya, and Semarang. But is there any collaboration with non-Java context? For example, I'm from Sumatra, I'm from Aceh, and I know there are a lot of, if we talk about 4-point future research theme topics, there's a lot of, you mentioned Lake Toba research before, but for the ongoing research or for the future research, is there possibilities that we also expand that network into non-centralized in Java, for example? And maybe this is also in considerations for many scholarship now having an affirmative action that they want to include non-developed area or region in Indonesia to also participate in the scholarship scheme. I was just wondering, what do you think about that?
As you know, things in Java are easier, well organized. So we have a, for example, I have a long-term collaboration with Gajah Mada University. And 2 years ago, I went to Palangkaraya, same procedure. Memorandum of science, and then nothing happens. My experience is that you are successful if you, because I know that also for the Indonesian government, it is important to have those collaborations with East Java. But in my experience, I always include co-supervisors. So I think it is important if for example, Palangkaraya Institute wants something, seek somehow a relationship with an established university in Indonesia, so that you can have some collaboration between colleagues in Jogja with, in this case, Palangkaraya, and then it is easier to get access. But in my experience, let's say, my trip was very, very interesting because it was, I felt myself like development aid. See, it was the old missionary who went and to help something to do the signature. That's not going to work. I mean, if you don't have the structure, you don't have the expertise, you don't have an international office, you don't have nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't work.
Yeah, maybe Tom. Yeah, but I agree with you. And, there are always the same names.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I remember that there was the university Patimura, yeah? Patimura. And precisely because the infrastructure was considered as not that strong, was dropped. I don't know the details anymore. And what I find it a pity because I think it is a kind of betting on the strong. The stronger ones are becoming stronger.
Yes.
And they are more or less monopolized the international relations. I think that the decentralization is indeed an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. Can I ask?
Yeah.
No, you can go first. I just want to drive something home. The collaboration you mentioned on and on again, all the time collaboration, and you also mentioned that we need to get our act together. We need to afford the collaboration firsthand before any partnership with the Dutch university. But then I see the technicalities, the problem within ourselves. In my experience, well, a long time ago, each university in Indonesia is confined by themselves and confined by the ministry regulation. Also, there's no room to really have a play date with different universities. And you mentioned about your project with the water and life, that it's now coming into like a domino effect because it has a track record. But then that works when overseas university has stamp on it. That's what I can see. But if beforehand to get our act together, that's difficult. Is there any know-how or a strategy we can take that home? Because I believe this all they're going all back home, and they need to back again to act together. And to come to that level, is there any strategy? Breaking down all the confinement that they will face later. And is it somewhere in the Netherlands you have similar?
I find it difficult to say something about it from the French perspective. Indeed, if you go back to the previous point, indeed, most collaborations are with Java. I think Radboud University has at the university level agreement only with the University of Indonesia and Gajah Mada. Maybe faculties have at a faculty level. And indeed, for the other universities outside Java, I would think it is important to network with one of those universities, have those links with Europe. And then you can expand. Otherwise, yeah. But once again, I find it difficult to say something from a Dutch perspective.
May I comment about that?
Okay.
Because now in Indonesia we have a scheme for big team research and collaboration.
Yes.
Actually, there is one scheme that we have to involve other universities from other part of Indonesia, not from Java. I think we can.
You are from
From Studio Prana, the Unika Studio Prana.
But in order to do that, still we need MOU, right? The university is supposed to.
MOU actually it is requirement to get funding from our government. It is why sometimes we need to have MOU first.
Once again, this is an interesting question. I remember very well that when we started in Bandung, there was quite some mistrust among UNPAD, ITB, and maybe that is still going on. Let's be that happens also in the Netherlands between Radboud and Leiden and so on. But once again, when you have a good project, people see, oh, there's money, there's interesting things, health, water. Then you can overcome, and people who trust each other. People who trust each other and who are not working for their own benefit, but really are interested in the things that you work with. Then you can overcome these things. And I really do believe that what happened in Bandung was through the investment of people like Twan, the medical people, really overcome that mistrust and say, well, we are not working for ITB or for UNPAD, but we are working for Radboud University. But we are working on something that is relevant for all of us. We all benefit from it in one way or another. That was my first point. We are not a charity, we are a university. So we benefit, all of us. And because we collaborate, all of us become stronger. That is also the idea.
Actually, I do have a follow-up questions, but I would like to give up an opportunity first.
But if it's not relevant, then you can
later on, I can.
Okay.
Please, otherwise we don't have time for you.
Yeah, okay. So my question is about the partnership. Does it have to be university with university? Can we make a partnership between an enterprise, but it's more a private enterprise, not a governmental, with Radboud, for example? And what kind of partnership do you expect?
You have experience.
Since I'm not from a
then I
university.
refer to the same. So the water project is now with businesses, with NGOs.
But in the beginning, it's always with university, or
Yeah.
No, in this case, not. I don't think so, because the Dutch, at least what I know, Rotterdam, they are so close.
Nowadays, if you apply for example, a fund from the Netherlands Organization for Scientific Research, they require that there is an NGO or a business or a non-university partner, or maybe more than that. So that is a condition to get money. So I would say yes, that is possible.
Okay.
for NWE, yes. So nowadays more and more requirement for non-university.
Okay.
But still, usually there's university also in.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking just only the enterprise and Radboud, for example, but since I'm not employed in one of the universities.
I think the science faculty has more experience in that. I think most. They mostly work with businesses, of course, and but then of course you have this ethical question.
We tried actually before with the Royal Haskoning, for instance. But use husbands. So we made a network. We call it a DUA, the Dutch urban approach. So then we try to develop a network. So, but it's initiated by Royal Haskoning actually. So it's a company. So in Indonesia, also with some Indonesian universities, and but doesn't really work again because of the money is not there. So
the company has really big money.
Not only company, but university. We also need to have source of funding.
Okay.
sometimes that's a dilemma, right? In order to make sure that you have a long-term collaborations, it's always funding. And in order to make that funding in Indonesia, usually if you would like to have a funding from the government, they need this MOU. So
It's very funding the
yeah.
paper.
But if we can have a different kind of source of funding, it's all right. So we don't need that kind of ceremony to stamp the MOU, etc., etc. So I remember last time, even in Padang, for instance, when we signed the MOU, national anthem was sang. So and so on and so on.
You can send it through email, right?
Sorry?
Through email.
Yeah, of course. But it is really true that the most important thing is not the MOU, but what should be done after that.
Well,
I would say, Pete, first start something, and then make the MOU, and not the other way around.
Indeed. But in order to start something, we need funding. So this is simple. And in order to get funding, we need
opportunity. Sometimes the people itself in Indonesia are like they don't want to take the opportunity for many reasons. For example, the institution has that opportunity for the staff, for example, but the staff wouldn't take the opportunity because one, perhaps about family, second, perhaps about the situation in their life that they cannot leave, and other things that also take into account. So I guess it's not only from the part of the institution itself who like to open the opportunity for them, but also from the individual itself. So sometimes it can also do both ways. So that's also one of the barriers why university cannot send people here, or perhaps they can establish a good infrastructure in their own university for people of America to come. So that's
same question in the back.
Yes, given. But okay, do you still have time?
Oh yeah.
Because of, okay, they have to visit.
I'm just not the point next to this. I'm just trying to reflect and maybe also looking at other countries, how they practice it. And then because one question over there, she's talking about how to spread it into non-Java islands. And then you mentioned that it should be not from top to bottom, but bottom to top. Okay. And then you also talking about building the network, but sometimes it's too late if it's the first thing to do. And also talking about trust. So it's just a practice. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know about MOU because I'm not from government and everything else, but correct me if I'm wrong. But is it better for us, student over here right now, to redefine our purpose here? To redefine, widen our purpose. So not only as a student, but we are put here as the representative of your department or your university. Because I look at Russia, so I have Daria, one of our friend from one supervisor. So she was put here in the Radboud University as her department gate. Yeah, so the not ambassador, what the representation, the agent or something like that. So she is the international office for their department, not for the university, for only her department. So she is a PhD student, have a project here with supervisor from the Radboud, but she also her role also as the gatekeeper between the Radboud University and her department, not only the university, only the department also. So by doing so, the trust, the network can be built up before it's too late. So maybe I'm just reflecting. I'm not sure if it's good practice or no, but to meet up in the middle between Indonesia needs from top to bottom the ceremonial thing, the and then the Dutch need, I need the people to work with me first, to build the trust first with me. Then maybe we can meet in the middle. So put someone then in here. So your role, maybe for us also, maybe we are not only students right now, we are not basic candidate, but also we can widen our purpose. Okay, when we back home, we are actually can be some kind of a gatekeeper. That's just a reflection, not a question.
So the conclusion,
No.
the conclusion.
Well done.
No,
Okay.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It's kind of intermediate. This brings me to another question. That's what I don't know. Indonesian students, PhD students are here quite some time. They learn about the society. But I wonder how it is the other way around.
Yes.
Dutch scholars are going to Indonesia or Tanzania. It's often for a very short time. And I wonder if they get to know the Indonesian society or the Indonesian students here, or the Dutch society. And that's why I was referring to that project of no mention, where 5 Indonesian students, former students, got that appointment for 5 years. And that I'm happy to say that some of them are still involved in Indonesian matters.
So they did a PhD before, these 5 students?
No.
Just involved in the research. Ah, right.
One of them wrote a PhD on something like in South October.
Yeah.
But the other ones were transferring to.
So maybe as the last sentence, I would like to expect you to say, based on your experience in collaboration with Indonesia, what have you learned?
Patience.
One question. I said it already, maybe not so much as an academician, but as a person, because you relativize a person. When I'm in the 14th, 15th floor, I think everything is important. My academic writing, I want to get higher in the rankings and citation indexes. Of course, that is important. And that is. But when I'm in Indonesia and you see people there, how they deal with everyday problems, looking for water, looking for health. Think, oh, life is not that bad. So what have you learned? Just to appreciate life, also the life of an academician from another perspective, and not only the Dutch perspective of getting higher in the citation indexes, but also
grounded.
Yeah, grounded, but also, for me that has become. And of course, I can say that because I'm over 60. I see that for younger colleagues, of course, when you start, it is important to get more academic articles published higher. So it is also because of your age, I think, that you can say that. But yeah, ask what did you learn? That indeed, all those indexes are important. But it is more important that you see that your research is contributing to, let's put it in a better world, or more quality of life for people. And so that's what I learned basically going to Indonesia.
You done?
I fully agree.
You want to add something else?
That's not that I want. I always say to the Dutch, to the Indonesians, it's also important to excel. You speak about Scopus listed. Yes, that is also important. So you also have to do that. But don't forget that there is also an other side to academic life.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
You still have time for another question?
I'm retired person.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. All right then. So.
No, because my question is quite related with Adi's question. He asked about what you learned, but actually maybe I am more direct, more direct question about how do you have impression about people coming from Indonesia come here to study, because you already have cooperation with Indonesia since a long time ago. We already since 1980 maybe.
Yeah.
And then you
1993.
1993.
Yeah, so I think you have impression about the chance and continuity about how we cooperate, and then also the academic quality of Indonesian students who come here to study. Because it is important for us to know, and then we can reflect how we can learn so far from Dutch university.
Yeah. I said something. So in my experience, in most of the Indonesian students that I supervise are very ambitious, and
But are we getting better?
yeah, no, I give you an example. In 1993, I was involved in an Azua program in Yogyakarta. Nobody spoke English. Everything was translated. And when I look back now, I mean, if I go to Gadget Lab here again, then you have Java. And, at least most students at the postgraduate level, they know a little bit of English. Okay, you can say it could be better, but that is a major shift. If I look over the past 25 years, I mean, once again, 25 years ago, you were lucky if you could find 1 or 2 students who spoke English, but I mean, it was all Bahasa Indonesian. Papers, all Bahasa Indonesian. You're laughing, but you know what I'm talking about. And nowadays, you can lecture in English, and you can have a good conversation in English. So that is not for our, of course. You have the ethical aspect, of course, and we are moving to English as the main language. Okay, you can debate whether that is good or whether you should also be proud of your Bahasa Indonesia. But I'm afraid, here again, if you look at the rankings, all top journals are in English. So you have to publish in English. I mean, if you also publish in Bahasa, of course. But, if you never published in a scope journal in English, then. So I don't know whether that addresses your question. But in general, some Indonesian students are more motivated and more ambitious than my Dutch students, who take for granted they just come to university and do something.
But ambitious in realistic term, or too ambitious that.
Let's keep it that way.
Let's keep it that way.
So I mean, if you're too ambitious, that is not realistic. Then
I did not say too ambitious. I didn't say too ambitious. Ambitious in a good way.
Do you want to add something, Ton?
No, because I should say developments are really very fast.
Yeah.
I didn't keep much track of the last decade. So I think France is better.
So, what more questions, perhaps? Is it sorry? Is it answer your question?
Not really, but it's okay.
All right. So you don't want to follow up?
Yeah, I can follow up later.
Okay then. So okay, then I give it.
Okay, my question is a reflective question for all of us, because in Indonesia, from my point of view, especially from my department, not urban and environment studies, but from the law faculty, for instance, we still quite sure that we have linearity in our thoughts. So also in a level of ministry, this linearity is quite
Strict.
Yeah, strict.
You understand the linearity?
Linearity.
So in Indonesia, it is important to have a linear knowledge. If you have a bachelor degree in a certain discipline, so your master degree is supposed to be also in that discipline, and then your doctoral degree also in that discipline.
No, but
not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Not yet abolished. It's been discussed, yes.
Yeah, I mean, because if we go to the reality, to the problem of people, and then we can talk only from my point of view.
Yeah.
For instance, law, but we have to collaborate all the knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
we have to.
We're not having interdisciplinary approach to research. Yeah, yeah.
Here again, the Bandung example is very important because that was an interdisciplinary project involving anthropology, economy, even religious studies again, medicine, who else? Economy. And really, if you want to do something about water, health, you cannot do that from one perspective. You really have to collaborate. And so at least the idea was to train PhD students to work in an interdisciplinary way. For example, I work with a water engineer. I have no idea about water management. So I had to learn a new language. But that is a way forward.
Yes, I think because of the time, but actually I still have one I think quite important questions. You said before what the Dutch can offer is quality and Indonesia can offer finance at the moment, right? Okay, but yeah, simplifications. But what do you think particular quality that Indonesia should improve in order to make these collaborations can go smoothly in the long term? What do we still lack of? What kind of quality do you think that Indonesian students of Indonesian institutions still lack of? Many, of course, but can you make it more specific? Language is one, I suppose.
Maybe.
I
give it a try.
Yeah,
you give it a try.
Please. The thing about the win-win situation and about, let's say, kind of national research agenda.
I'll give you an
And I think that I'm always a bit conscious about it because I think those scientific agendas are often influenced by, let's say, the political environment.
Of course.
Now, in that way, I should say that I think that as such, by involving different stakeholders, research, I find it pretty democratic. But I'm not sure if this is what happens. Real involvement of different stakeholders. Of course, it's more complicated than I'm certainly aware of. But my question is, who determines the agenda?
Is there anything we can do about that? We are not decision maker at the moment. Maybe later on, in 5 years from now, one of us becomes decision maker. But as a scholar, so to say.
Well, you can answer that question.
Yeah, based on your experience.
Based on my experience.
Yeah.
I think, well, patience.
All right. Okay. Frans, I expect an honest answer from you too.
Now, this does not apply to Indonesian universities only, but to all universities, but specialized. For example, I'll give you an example. I'm a scholar of religion.
Yes.
Now, in Gajah Mada, we have, you know that, the Center for Cross-Cultural and Religious Studies, specialized in that. They are good in that. For me, it is prestigious to say, well, I collaborate with that center. Because I think in the Southeast Asia, there's really a center of excellence, and they really focus on that, and they are, in my view, the best in the whole of Indonesia. So for me, as a scholar of Nijmegen, it is prestigious to say, well, I collaborate with that center and a lot of publications together. And that's what I mean. So you cannot specialize, you cannot be good in everything. By the way, that applies also to Radboud University. You cannot be good in everything. But at least have some programs that you are really top. So that means focus. Here again, long-term investment. Once again, that that needs decision making. Say, okay, we are good in water management or law or whatever. Geography.
Yeah.
I mean, to give you an example, when I came to this university, the science faculty was not doing well, and now it is top. Top quality, getting huge amounts of money, and that is well planned investment, long-term commitment. That is what I mean. So I would say for every university, also in Indonesia, you have to set some priorities and say, okay, we are focusing on that, and we want to be top leading there. And of course, for others, that is not pleasant, and because also our university board, if it is the humanities, you say, wow. But if it is science, then they have a lot of money and they invest in everything. That is, I think, not nice for us in the humanities. But when I look from the perspective of the executive board, I can understand. And they say, well, we are good in this and that, and so that is where we invest in.
But you don't need so much compared to science.
That's
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm glad to warm up myself.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious about why now there's limited Indonesianists in Radboud.
Sorry?
Yeah, Indonesianists because
Indonesianist.
Indonesianists because I think Town Foundation, I can call him Indonesianist, maybe you too, but in the later generation, I think I cannot find it. Except maybe Edwin Kejong, or maybe if it's related with the
Project.
the changing interest of the university from Asia to Africa, or maybe something else. No.
No, I think you have a point. That is absolutely true.
But I notice also general tendency. There's a general tendency to focus less on regions.
Yeah.
And I remember the time that we had a lot of Indonesian this also in Radboud, Professor yeah. Actually, I regret.
No. So I think that's the answer, because now is they more focused on the team instead of the region. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's an underestimation about the regional context.
Yeah. It's a geographer. All right. So again, thank you very much indeed. And thank you all. I think that's it for today. And also I thank you very much for the committee who arranged everything. Have a nice day.